I've mentioned this just briefly. This is really where climate change and our diets collide. Meat, dairy and pre-prepared foods are really high energy and water users. They take up much more energy and water than fruit and vegetables. They also are the sectors that contribute disproportionately to greenhouse gas emissions and to degraded biophysical environments. And this is from work by Tony McMichael published in The Lancet. And then in a report down that quote down the bottom, the Victorian Eco Innovation Laboratory did work for the Victorian government and said that there is very strong correlation between the dietary changes recommended for health and the reduced environmental impact. Let's just compare meat, dairy and pre-prepared foods to, one more slide, sorry. We know that agriculture is a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. Livestock production is the biggest contributor to that 22%. And Tony McMichael's modelling showed that even if you turn to low-intensity livestock production, not the way we do it now, it would still contribute 60% to that 22%. He and others are saying that what we need to do is to contract in wealthy countries our consumption of meat and milk to about 90 grams a day, and that poorer countries need to be able to be entitled to come up to that 90 grams a day. Anyway, intensive agriculture and climate change, there is that toxic relationship there. Fruit and vegetables is very different scenarios. I'm not going to say, this is very general and glib, and it's, you know, region to region differences here, but unlike the huge corporate meat and dairy producers, fruit and veg is generally produced by thousands of small producers who do not need high-tech, high-energy equipment. There are both intensive and extensive systems. Some of them are monocultural, but it's where in horticulture you often see polycultural foodscapes, and they're much more environmentally friendly. But fruit and vegetables extremely climate sensitive. Hence, you see a great volatility in supply, hence prices, and fashions for fruit and vegetables. And that volatility in supplies, prices and fashions exacerbates food insecurity. Again, I'm labouring the point about there is unequal access to the healthy part of the food system and the unhealthy part of the food system. This is a photo of the Queen Victoria Market in Melbourne, an absolutely celebrated inner city market. But increasingly, you see this used to be the province of poor shoppers. It is now highly affluent shoppers go to this market. It's no longer cheap or accessible culturally or physically for the inner city, poorer inner city dwellers who've been displaced from the inner city. This is now a mecca for the affluent. Food security operates at multiple levels, and I'm going to concentrate now on the local level. I do think that we've got some good natural experiments going back over the 20th century to do what I'm talking about. Of course, the times have changed and we can't go back to that period, but I am arguing that we can re-engineer cities to achieve the co-benefits of food security, physicality, health and well-being. What I'm suggesting is we need a 21st version of post-war Britain where food rationing, the British population had never been so healthy as through food rationing. They were all on their push bikes and they had allotment gardens. They were a healthy mob in the mid-1950s. Mid-war United States, Eleanor Roosevelt's Victory Gardens, at that point they were feeding 40% of the US population their fruit and vegetables. And then Cuba, which did have an impact on Philippa and me, beside the jazz, the music, was seeing their extraordinary health outcomes. Yes, they've got a very good health system, but a combination of their low-intensity agriculture and their organic agriculture and their high-intensity physical movement. I'm certainly not, Cuba is riddled with other inequalities, but in terms of health and education, pretty good. I've actually put this slide in as a result of my participation in the Foreign Policy School. When I thought about all the talks, what did I come away with in what is a sustainable food system? And these are the points that I took away. You need production based on renewable resources, but that is context specific, because in the Australian context, it's hard to think that water is a renewable resource. I know it drops out of the sky, but it's just not dropping. So I'm beginning to think water's an unrenewable resource in our setting, not here, of course, so context specific. You have to have a drawdown, a minimal drawdown on non-renewable sources like fossil fuels. There was Jules Pretty from Essex University was talking about the importance of autarky. A food system needs as much as possible to draw from within the system boundaries. Now that could be a regional boundary or the New Zealand boundary, but take your non-renewables and your renewables from it. Don't import the feed grains from Australia. Draw from within your system boundaries. You can grow food in a way that actually gives back to the environment while drawing on the environment, and the best example there is carbon sinks. So to be growing food that actually absorbs carbon and other emissions. We do need a sustainable food system is one that is resilient to price shocks and to climatic events. Resilience, I know it's a buzzword now, but and Jules Pretty gave numerous examples where the most resilient food systems are what he would call polycultural. You are not just growing meat or just growing fruit and veg. You have mixed farms where possible, or farms side by side that are doing mixed forms of production and mixed commodity production. And resilience comes with non-commercial availability. When you do have price shocks or huge droughts, huge wet events, as has happened in Northern Australia, you actually need to be able to barter food and borrow food and grab food off the tree. So non-commercial availability is a really important protector against some of these climatic events. And where does non-commercial availability come from? It comes from civic agriculture.